The latest Texas legislative session is over, and Governor Abbott still, in fact, has several bills awaiting his signature. But tonight, we're going to speak with our media partners over at Texas Monthly to get a good look at some of the major players in the recent legislative session. And joining us tonight is Ben Rowan. Ben's the senior editor, if you don't know, for news and politics over at Texas Monthly. So the session meant a little bit of a break with tradition when it comes to you guys, because for 50 years, and I've read it in the past, Texas Monthly's created this list of what you all saw as the best and the worst from lawmakers from each session. So first question right out of the gate, why did Texas Monthly decide to put an end to the tradition?
1970, we started ranking best and worst legislators, and we've been doing that every 2 years subsequently, and I was involved in those projects in 2021 and 2023. And the main difference is that in the 1970s, lawmakers really operated under one principle: to vote their district, to reflect the will of their constituents. That sort of type of politics we kept hearing repeatedly from folks we talked to does not rule the day anymore. The influence of out-of-state billionaires over how to vote is huge. The influence of one or two political leaders and party politics really influences lawmakers a lot more than it ever did. And so it didn't make sense to assign people to a best or worst list. What we really wanted to know was who wielded power and what that meant for the rest of us.
Okay, fair explanation. You guys at Texas Monthly also looked at the legislature in a little bit of a different way this time around. And there are three lawmakers, some who represent parts of North Texas. The Texas Monthly labels them, if you will, the Paxton Posse. I'm going to let you go ahead and tell all of us, what do you mean by that, the Paxton Posse?
You'll recall the biggest issue of the 2023 legislature was the impeachment of Ken Paxton. And the Texas House impeached Paxton, the Attorney General. The Texas Senate acquitted him, and then Paxton went to war in the GOP primary. He targeted dozens of incumbents who'd voted to remove him from office, and in about a dozen or so races, his preferred candidates won. And they came to the Texas House this session. And we identified three: Andy Hopper of Decatur, Shelley Luther of Tom Bean, and Mitch Little of Louisville, who really wore the mantle of being Paxton's people this session. And I think, Shelley Luther tells a story about emerging from a coma she had and seeing the Paxton impeachment and deciding to run for office for a third time. Andy Hopper really made enemies with the incumbents who happened to win, because he just was a real hardliner. But I think of all of them, Mitch Little is the real star of the group. And no matter where you fell on the political spectrum, folks we talked to expressed that he really had a good handle on lawmaking. He had been one of Paxton's defense lawyers during the Senate trial, and he made no qualms, no secret of being very, very right-wing this session. But Democrats we talked to expressed that he would frequently work with them, and that he was able to put aside his own personal politics to advance certain reforms he wanted on criminal justice.
Gotcha. You got Representative James Tallarico highlighted in this article that we're focusing our talk on tonight. We've seen him speak against the bill to, for instance, fund private schools with taxpayer money. It's a bill that we all know ultimately passed in this session. How does this lawmaker help tell the story of this past session?
Tallarico is a Democrat, a very outspoken one. But to really understand him, you actually need to look at the Republican side of the equation. Before this session, two Republicans were vying to become Speaker of the House. And the outcome of that race was a concession to the right wing of the Republican Party, which is that Democrats would no longer be able to chair committees in the Texas House. And that's a tradition that has existed for decades. Because of that, Democrats had no formal power. And they had sort of two approaches to have any influence over state politics. The first was to work with Republicans as much as possible to try and remove what they deemed the worst parts of right-wing legislation. And the other was the approach favored by James Tallarico, which was to draw a real line in the sand, not focus so much on compromise or attempts at compromise, but to draw a line in the sand and position the Democratic Party's values very clearly for voters ahead of the 2026 election. Now, Tallarico made his main pitches on vouchers and in opposition to a bill to restore the Ten Commandments to public schools, and he failed. Both of those bills passed. But what Tallarico did do is really draw attention to those issues in a way that puts it before the electorate. And we thought that that story was an interesting one, and whether it works remains to be seen.
Abortion and THC, huge topics this session. Can you tell us about the two lawmakers that Texas Monthly, at least you guys believe, had an impact on those topics?
The THC issue was carried in the Senate by Charles Perry, a Lubbock Republican. And this is an interesting issue because I think it took a lot of Texans by surprise that the state was seeking a total THC ban. But Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, made this a priority of his from the outset of the session. And to folks who follow the legislature, it's kind of taken as a given that if Dan Patrick wants something, he'll get it. And indeed, Dan Patrick wanted a THC ban, a total THC ban. Charles Perry delivered it for him, and ultimately when the House passed a version that was slightly less than total, the Senate version prevailed. That's now before Governor Abbott, who seems to be wavering on the decision of whether or not to sign it and approve the ban. On abortion, you'll recall that in 2021, the ledge passed some near total abortion bans that went into effect when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And one problem is that the law was not very clear on the exceptions to the ban, specifically when the life of the mother was deemed to be at risk. And because the law was not very clear, doctors were presented with patients and they didn't know whether they could, do a life-saving abortion in order to protect the life of the mother. And this session, a variety of lawmakers took a stab at clarifying the exemption, including Democrat Ann Johnson from Houston, who worked with a Republican pretty closely, Senator Brian Hughes, to clarify that exemption. And it was an issue that drew a lot of heat for the Democrats involved with it, because abortion is obviously a very charged issue in Texas politics. But ultimately, the bill passed.
Well, this legislative session done and dusted. We, first of all, appreciate the discussion, and let's not make it 2 years until after the next session's over that we talk again. Always a good political talk. We appreciate it, man. Thank you, Ben. And you can read the full article right now. It's posted at texasmonthly.com. CBS News Texas.